This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dornall and me, Daddy Warpig. We are Geek Gab for, Monday, April 29th, 2024. And it is such an awesome year. I I had a post I saw earlier that made me feel really depressed, and then I realized it was only mostly true. So
Fake news.
not yeah, only mostly true, not quite fake news. It was listing all the movies that were coming out for the rest of the year. Um so here are some of the things that are coming out for the rest of the year that you that I want you to hear these because these are so awesome. Are you ready? I want you
Yeah,
to understand how awesome the originality is of what's coming out.
I'm getting so excited in anticipation. Tell me more.
Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Ballerina, a John Wick spinoff. Bad Boys 4, Inside Out 2, Quiet Place a Day 1, Despicable Me 4, Twisters, Deadpool and Wolverine, Borderlands, Alien Romulus, Craven the Hunter, Beetlejuice 2, Transformers 1, Joker Folie à Deux, Venom 3, Gladiator 2, Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, The Karate Kid, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Disney's Mufasa the Lion King.
Is that it?
That's not all the movies that are coming out. I had to double check, but
It sounds like that's just the Disney owned movies coming out. I could probably think of another dozen intellectual properties that either need another sequel or a prequel that we could add in there.
we do have The Fall Guy coming, which is, a TV show being remade as a movie. Um, we have the third sequel in the Strangers horror movie series, another Garfield movie. Um, we have. I'm looking now at Rotten Tomatoes. Um, we have Beverly Hills Cop Axel Foley. Uh, we have Twisters, Deadpool, Wolverine, Borderlands, which sounds original, but it's actually just made from video game. Trap, a new M. Night Shyamalan movie coming out.
Oh dear, they still give that guy budgets.
They have a remake of The Crow coming out. I don't think I mentioned that.
No, that wasn't on your initial list. No need to. Is there nothing sacred anymore?
We have a horror movie called Speak No Evil. The third Terrifier movie's coming out. They're remaking the Universal Wolfman movie. Moana 2 is supposedly coming out. The Wiccan movie is coming out. And those are literally, other than the ones I've listed. Oh, the man who made The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman is releasing a movie called Nosferatu, which is a remake of Nosferatu, the 1920
Oh,
horror movie. Um,
oh.
and then Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, which is the third movie in the Spider-Verse trilogy, is supposed to be coming out. And that's it. That's Rotten Tomatoes. Those are the movies that weren't on that list that are in the Rotten Tomatoes article of most anticipated movies of 2024.
Anticipated by whom? Oh, the people paid to write listicles online.
No, I've seen the other movies that are that are coming out, and these actually are, top of the line. I mean, there's the Amy Winehouse biopic I didn't mention.
Oh, that's oh my. There's how do you? That's a niche. My goodness, I am at a loss for words. That reminds me that they did a biopic recently came out on Bob Marley. You know what
Oh
I call
yeah.
that? You know what I call that? That is boomer catnip. Nobody gives a crap about Bob Marley, uh, except for 24 people from the ages of 60 to 75.
I met one really gorgeous, like 6'3" blonde goddess, uh, who is just a little bit younger than me, who loved reggae music. I'm sure she loved that movie. This was like 20 years ago. I knew her. Her name was Allison, but other than her, I cannot think of a single person, not literally, not one person I have met in my entire life who was even not even close to my age, like ever. Any human being of any age I have ever met would have wanted to go see that movie. She would have probably wanted to go see it. I don't know if even she would have liked it, but no one else would have been really interested.
Man, that's niche.
Um, but hey, also the Ryan Reynolds' new movie is coming out, the Imaginary Friends movie. If
That guy. If you like that sort of thing, Ryan Reynolds is one of those guys, the classic actor where he just plays himself in every movie he's in.
but
And
he's
either if you,
really good at it.
he's very good at being himself. Yes,
And he picks good material. I mean, he has like his hot spot, and he
I'll
knows it, and he picks.
I'll grant you that for sure. When they did when Deadpool first showed up in the Wolverine movie, uh, I said I said the same thing. I was like, wow, this is the perfect role for Ryan Reynolds. If anybody is going to be obnoxious enough to play Deadpool, that'd be him.
Or the Free Guy. What was that movie?
Yeah, forgot.
Yeah, I mean that was a perfect movie for Ryan Reynolds, and it was a good movie. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but that's
Oh, do
like
you know what
his
wasn't?
wheelhouse.
I think I talked about this on the show before. Do you know what it wasn't? He did this one man in a box
Oh
artsy
yeah,
thriller where he was physically, the character was buried underground and
he
all
was
he
like
had was a cell
kidnapped in
phone with limited
Iraq.
reception. Yeah, kidnapped and in a box underground or something like that. And so the entire film is him trying to get help from the outside with his phone with limited signal and try to direct people to where he is. Um, he wasn't terrible, but I I think that might have stretched uh, his ability and his appeal.
He did that time travel movie on Netflix that also was like his uh, action, had some action in it, heartfelt moments, and a lot of his brand of comedy. I thought he did that well too. Not a lot of action, but just enough to be kind of spice it up. Um,
Yeah.
that's like, you know, as long as he's
All right,
in
we
that.
we we don't have to pick on Ryan Reynolds anymore. We've got all of Hollywood to make fun of.
But can you I mean, look at that list? So when I thought that list was like really unfair. I thought it was like really, really unfair. But it only turns out you know, it's only a little bit unfair. It's it's not really badly unfair. Oh yeah, one of the big movies that just barely came out that was left off the list, Challengers, you know. Zendaya's group sex movie. Sorry, I probably should have phrased that a different way. That's the only thing anybody remembers from the trailer, right?
I did not see the trailer.
Okay, she's sitting on a bed and she has two guys and they start kissing on her neck. That's it. That's the image. Yep. That's the only image people
Oh,
remember from the trailer. And I didn't even
nobody's gonna
remember
pay to
that.
see that.
Say that again.
Nobody's gonna pay to see that.
I'm not paying to see that. I didn't even remember that. That's the thing. You've got Zendaya sitting there, and it's supposed to be this big, shocking thing, and I didn't even remember. I didn't remember the name of the movie. I didn't remember the trailer. I literally thought that was something from Euphoria because she's got this whole show on HBO that's like teenagers doing sex stuff. That's like the entire point of the show. I didn't remember the existence of the movie. Somebody said it's this, like today, somebody said, oh, it's this tennis thing. Ho, 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 he. Like there was something terrible about it. And I'm like, challengers, tennis. What's that about? So I looked it up and I saw the trailer. I'm like, oh, that's not from Euphoria? Completely wasted. Nobody's going to go see this movie. It just came out on like Thursday. I completely forgot this was a movie that wasn't part of her teen show. Zendaya, um, you described my man. Of course, I can't remember his name now, so you're going to laugh at me. From 300,
Oh, Gerard Butler.
Gerard Butler. You described my man Gerard Butler as a charisma vacuum. But Zendaya, I will put out Zendaya as an absolute charisma black hole. She is far worse than Gerard Butler. I will put that forth.
You know, and I've said this before. You're right. You're right. I've said this before. I don't have anything against her personally, but if you're going to be presented as a movie star, you need to have a lot of talent or a lot of beauty, and she doesn't have a lot of either. And maybe that's too bad. Maybe it's too bad that she's just, been a fashion model for years before she was in Hollywood. But normally they don't cram someone like this in our faces for as long as they have with Zendaya. Normally, Hollywood gets the point after a couple of years and they're like, all right, we'll move on to the next, we're going to try to make this next person the next big thing. Not with Zendaya. She's here to stay. And she'll drag down the box office with her.
She she just doesn't have the acting chops. I'm not
No.
saying she's ugly, but she's more interesting, good looking than beautiful. And she's not really, really good looking. She doesn't stand up. Um, Although this last week has been a really unfortunate week for me to hear about things that I did not know about, and I'm really glad I missed. Like I read this description of a movie. Oh, this movie is sort of like Frankenstein's monster, where they create this person and they go out and have to interact with society and stuff. And I'm like,
Oh
oh,
no.
that sounds like an interesting movie.
Oh
I
no.
might kind of want to see that. And then I find out that it's actually like this bondage sex flick.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What was the name? The one with Emma Stone.
Emma
I think
Stone, poor things.
Poor Things. One of the most disgusting things I've seen obliquely in a long time. I watched a few scenes of it, and it was, whew,
I am
that
really
won Academy
glad.
Awards. I think she won an Academy Award for Best Actress for that.
I am really glad I did not walk sideways into that movie. Like I did not go into that movie thinking, "Oh, this is going to be kind of a fun horror movie," and then no, that's not what it is. I'm like, "Oh, I would have been so appalled." I am so glad I did not accidentally walk into that movie. I'm
Yep.
just
You wouldn't be able to do the show anymore. You would have been shocked,
oh,
gobsmacked.
the Fallout show was the worst. That was as bad as I can take it, as far as being just smacked across the face with things I was not expecting to be thrown at me at the beginning of a show. I just, why would you? I don't understand the point. Henry Cavill, they attacked Henry Cavill for saying this. I don't know, it was a month or 5 or 6 weeks ago. He says, "I don't understand the point of sex scenes." Almost always, and I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not quoting him. You have to, forgive me for that. Almost always, they don't do anything in the show. They're just there.
The purpose
They're
is
just,
to titillate, not tell a story.
yeah.
Uh,
So
storytellers used to just fade to black, right? What happened to just fading to black?
yeah, it's just not my. So one of those things that I'm really glad that I obliquely found out about, that I had dodged a bullet. I had dodged that bullet, and I've never been happier to dodge a bullet, because I just, I heard about that and I'm like, nope, I'm I'm okay. I'm okay. Um, but yeah, I also, something I didn't know. Did you know that Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for Joker?
I didn't.
Neither did I. Which just goes to show you how meaningful the Oscars are now.
I mean, they really are pointless. But sometimes it's amazing to find out who wins them and who doesn't. Yeah, Macho Mandel, thanks for listening. It's good to see you. Zendaya is definitely a psyop. You mean uh, some sort of weird attempt to influence people's perceptions on beauty and or acting ability? I might agree with that.
Oh, see, Simon Hogwood, he's talking about Nosferatu. We need someone to remake that movie about the making of Nosferatu, where Max Schreck was really a vampire. Um, I really want to see that one, because I've heard that's actually a good movie. And that also has one of my guys in it, who played Green Goblin, whose name I can't remember, who was
Willem
in the
Dafoe.
first Willem Dafoe, yeah, who was in the first John Wick movie. Um, So those are the two shows I need to watch. I need to watch Continental, uh, which is a John Wick TV show, which has been out for a while now, that I haven't watched. Had a surprise sex scene in the first episode, which kind of set me aback.
Wait,
And
wait,
I
wait.
also need.
Wait. I want to clarify that. Do you mean that it was a sex scene that was a surprise to you, or was it a surprise sex scene, or a scene of surprise sex?
I
Those are
did
two
not
very
know there
different
was
things.
going. I did not know there was going to be nudity in the show.
Oh, okay, good. That
I was very shocked when they had a sex scene with nudity in it, because none of the John Wick films have had nudity in it that I can remember. Am I blanking that out?
no. What? Willem Dafoe. What? Was in John Wick. Yes, he was the fellow assassin who was a sniper, and um, he basically put his neck out for John Wick, and the Russian mobster killed him in his own home.
Yep. Did a fabulous job. Um, yeah, he was in the first John Wick movie. You guys got to keep up. We're moving fast. We're jumping tracks here. So I've got to see Continental, because it has Mel Gibson in it, who's another one of my guys. And so is Keanu Reeves. So, you want a list of some of my guys. Those are four of them. And then I also want to see Shogun, because everybody keeps on saying how good it is, but apparently it does have sex in it. So I have been forewarned, though, so at least it's not a surprise this time. Although really, I want to see the original Shogun miniseries from like the 70s too, to compare it.
Oh
Uh,
wow, yeah, I haven't seen that in probably 25, 30 years. It's very long,
and
like
I've
8 hours.
never seen it.
I think
Never
you should.
seen it.
I think you'd like it. Might be slow for you, but I think you'd like it.
Richard Chamberlain, though, is just an incredible actor. Um, uh, Young people I've spoken to are convinced Zendaya is beautiful and talented beyond any actress in the past. Oh, I've got a headache. Oh,
Yeah, it's a psyop, all right.
oh. Zendaya isn't even more beautiful than Anna Taylor-Joy. Um,
The other actress you can't get away from. Um,
who actually is a talented actress? That's the thing. She has
uh,
talent.
uh, does she? Okay.
Well, she did a great job in The Northman. She was in Last Night in Soho, that Edgar Wright movie that I saw, the horror movie that I saw. I don't know if I talked about that or not. Um, yeah, I've seen her in a few things. She's going to be in that Furiosa movie, which is
It once again, it's a prequel. It's a prequel that nobody needed or asked for. If the action's half as cool as Fury Road, it'll still be fun to watch. But unfortunately, you have to watch Anya. What's her name? Play
Anya Taylor
Furiosa.
Joy.
Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah,
Oh yeah, and
let
she
me
was.
let me go on record. I actually don't like her as an actress.
I got
Um,
that.
I don't think she's a particularly good actress, but uh, sure, if we're comparing Anya's to Zendaya's, sure, she's a much better actress than her. Um, I don't see her carrying. We'll see. Like we'll see. I think we're gonna go see Furiosa. Maybe she can carry a film on her own. She did this really strange movie. I think we talked about it on the show about the crazy chef.
Oh, the
Uh,
menu.
the menu, yeah. That was carried by the chef. You've got Ralph Fiennes in the film. Um, I didn't think much of her acting in that one, but that was her. She was playing. I guess she was the protagonist, but really it was carried by the chef and all the other weird characters in the film. I don't know. We'll see if she can carry Furiosa. I'm skeptical, but like I said, man, if the action and the chases are half as good as Fury Road, then who cares? It'll be a good time.
I think Anya Taylor Joy is solid enough an actress to work in an ensemble picture where she's part of a. Because all three of the movies I've talked about, she's part of a larger cast.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I'll definitely grant you that.
I don't think she's a strong enough actress to carry a movie all by herself.
Well, let's reserve further judgment till we see Furiosa.
Um, but yeah, I really would like to see Mel Gibson come back and do a final Mad Max movie, like Old Man Mad Max. I think that would be awesome. I don't think that's ever going to happen,
Probably not.
but like you know how Sylvester Stallone came back and capped off Rocky, um, and then capped off Rambo with Rambo 4.
Hmm.
Um, there was no Rambo 5, never happened. Um, I would just like to see Mel Gibson cap off Mad Max with, one final. Someone on Twitter called it uh, Old Man Mad Max, just like a final Mad Max movie. I would love to see that. Um, I don't know. Um, he has had a really quiet but busy career the last few years, doing a lot of sort of under the radar movies, nothing really, really big. Um, and honestly, I've missed most of them because they're really hard to catch. But he's in the Continental, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to watch it before the sex scene kind of tossed me off.
Gibson.
Yeah,
Oh, cool. All right,
did,
maybe I'll watch that.
did I not mention that?
I think there was a litany of films, so I wasn't clear on which one Mel Gibson was in.
Ah, He's in the Continental. He plays like something happens with with the setup, and he's the one who has to come in. So he's the main mover and shaker. I don't know if he's a bad guy or the protagonist, or he's the person who sets up the hotel so it becomes the hotel we know. I haven't seen the series, but he's the big draw in the series, and I haven't watched it. So that may be, what I do for next week.
Cool.
Is watch Shogun in the Continental to kind of get those out. But for this week, I watched Late Night with the Devil on Shudder or AMC Plus, because AMC Plus includes Shudder now, and I also watched Channel Zero, which is a sci-fi original series that's had 4 seasons now, and each season is based around a different internet copy pasta. And so I watched the first season. So I don't know. And you also did you have a chance to watch Late Night with the Devil?
I did.
Okay. But you did not watch Channel Zero.
Nope.
Okay. You would hate it.
That one was not on my radar.
You would seriously, really, really, really hate it. And I am not going to tell you would be wrong. In fact, let me get that one out of the way so we can talk about Late Night with the Devil.
Sure. Tell me about this creepypasta show.
I am not part of the culture that creepypastas came from. And so the only other creepypasta I really have listened to, I haven't read them, because creepypastas originally like posted. I haven't read them. The only other creepypasta I had was someone had taken the creepypasta, had a voice actor read it, and put it up on YouTube. And it was about a broadcast tower, a radio tower, where this person had to work at a DJ and keep on playing music, or bad things would start happening to this town. It was, it was kind of fun. It held my attention enough. And it had the same sort of weaknesses as this show, which was, while both of them were episodic, each new episode was a post that was written after the original post, and they weren't necessarily planned from the beginning to be a coherent story. So they're not plotted as a book or a novel. They're not pieces of a book or a novel. They're just stuff people made up as they were going along. And so there's a lot of threads that get picked up and dropped, and a lot of things that suddenly get mentioned later that don't make sense and would have changed things greatly had they actually been, quote unquote, real, or if they had existed in the earlier episodes. And there's just a lot of really freaky things going on, because it's supposed to be horror, and so you need unnerving and creepy things that happen. And like in the creepypasta for the radio tower was better in that the things that were happening were a little bit more imaginative, a little bit more unnerving. But they were they also tied together better at the end. This one did not end up tying together all that well at the end. And some of the things that happened, they went back to the well of, oh, here's this really, really freaky thing, but it's just a dream or a vision or whatever. The guy just wakes up and it's not real, or he wakes up and he's asleep and it's not real. And they went back to that well so much it just became annoying.
Uh-huh.
Um, and a lot of the things that happened are just never explained. They make no sense. Even when you got to the end of the season and you know what's supposed to have been going on, it doesn't make sense in retrospect. Some of the creepy things that happen just don't make sense. So it doesn't hang together because it was never planned from the beginning. So let me back up and explain what happened. Um, there's a town where these 5 kids disappeared and 4 of their bodies were found and they were killed by a serial killer, including the twin brother of the main protagonist. The main protagonist comes back to his town 25 years later. And when he comes back to his town, all of these creepy and mysterious events start up again, including the broadcast of this weird independent show called, and I'm going to get the name wrong, Cottonwood Cove, which is this little, almost PBS style puppetry pirate show that him and his friends from back then remember, that was only broadcast for a few months during the summer when these disappearances were going on. And his twin was one of the people who disappeared. But unlike the other 4 kids who disappeared, his twin's body was never discovered. So kids start disappearing from the town. And he starts remembering things about what happened back then. And because of him acting in kind of strange ways, and it comes out that he had had a mental breakdown before he came back to the town. His character is this famed child psychiatrist, child psychologist. He had gone on Dr. Phil. I mean, he's a nationwide, super famous child psychologist. Um, and he had had himself voluntarily committed because of some things that have been happening. That comes out when he comes back to the town, and some other things come out. And because of that, people begin suspecting him. And so he's trying to prove that whatever they're thinking, he's not involved in these disappearances. But he's beginning to suspect that maybe his memories might not be accurate, or that other things are going on. And then children in the town um, are beginning, one daughter that he saves from the woods from this disappearance in this apparently impossible way attacks her brother, and it seems like it may be related with this pirate show that's come back on the air. And all of these things started when he came back into town, and adults are getting really hostile towards him, and other kids are starting to act weird, and that's what's going on. It's almost, if you've read old school 70s, 80s Stephen King, it's not a copy of a Stephen King story, but it's kind of in a similar vein of this small, isolated town and bad things are happening with the kids and you don't know what's going on. It's very, I don't know if
Boring.
the person was actually influenced by that, but it's reminiscent of some of those things. Um, and it's got actors and actresses in it that you would recognize because they've been in other things. And so it is low budget, but that's fine because it doesn't have to be high budget. It doesn't require a lot of special effects. It doesn't require a lot of, there's no need for CGI. There's no need for, a whole bunch of things. And it's limited to not a lot of locations, and you don't have to have a ton of actors. And so the things that are going on are, um, the low budget is fine for what the show is. It doesn't need to be this lavishly produced Hollywood production. The performances from actors you've seen before are solid. The main actor, who's the protagonist, gives a decent enough performance. The kids are okay for kid actors. Um, and it's okay. It's not great. It's not even good. It's all right. I would not recommend it. It's amateurish. It reminds you that most people who write stories on the internet, once you get past several levels of incompetence, like not being able to, if you've read, there's a, someone wrote a list of reading through a slush pile, and the very bottom of the slush pile is this person has schizophrenia and should not be writing anything ever because they're insane, and they literally produce gibberish. Their letters are not in order that actually make comprehensible words. They just can't write. Literally, their brain doesn't function. But several orders above that is, can't punctuate words, doesn't know how to capitalize, whatever. Once you get up past passable composition, you reach a level of can't structure stories. Someone who can write but can't structure stories is what we call amateurish. And that's not necessarily a knock on them. That doesn't mean they're terrible. It doesn't mean they're awful at composition. It means what they need is an editor to sit down with them and say, you know, develop their talents and abilities, whatever they have, because they may actually be capable of becoming a writer who can produce professional work. Maybe not someone who can support themselves with their work, but who can produce professional quality work and make some money at it. But they need to know, okay, if you want this event to happen later in the story, you need to have this happen earlier in the story. And you have introduced two different things, and I'll use an example from a fantasy book. You've introduced this particular poison that's a magical poison made from a lotus flower, and you've also introduced a magical poison made from a crystal. You don't really need two magical poisons because they both do exactly the same thing in the story. Um, they're made by the same, organization, and your character really uses them in the same places. There are no differences between them. They kill people in the same way. Just get rid of the crystal one. You only need one poison here. So only use this one poison. You can get rid of the crystal one. Or, hey, you introduced this particular, gun earlier in the story, or character earlier in this story, and they do nothing the entire story. Either they should do something and have some impact on the story later, or they shouldn't be there at all, because the events that occur later in the story, this character, because they're the chief of police and they know the events that are going on because they're the father of your main character, and they were there when they heard her talking about this murder that's going on, they would absolutely interfere in these events you're going on later. So either make it so that her father isn't the chief of police, or make it so that her father interferes later in the events going on in some meaningful way. These are all things that when you're developing your skill as a writer, you have to learn. And they're things that people who are writing things for fun on the internet have not necessarily had to learn. And one of the weaknesses of the modern literary community is they don't have editors who can work with writers or who are willing to work with writers to teach them these sort of things, to draw out their talent, to help them learn, hey, these are the sorts of things you need to think about when you're once you've moved past being a competent enough writer to write a story. These are the things you need about to make a story that feels satisfying. Um, and so it's it is that the story elements of this season were amateurish. And I don't know if that's because the people who put the season together themselves were amateurish, or if they were hewing close to the copy pasta and the copy pasta was amateurish. But I do know that both the copy pastas I have been familiar with showed similar signs of that level of amateurishness, to where the people who wrote them are imaginative. They have good imaginations. They have put elements in there that are in other stories, but still could have worked. But they needed to weave them together better. They needed to weave them together in a more satisfying way. And there are elements in there that should have had a major impact on the story that either should not have been mentioned or should have had a big impact on the story. And so the story came off as being really weak and meandering and confused, which is a symptom of putting things together on an ad hoc basis. It's meandering, it's confused, and things that should have a big impact don't, or things that elements that they're missing elements that should be there. It's not to say that the thing is all bad. There's a lot of things that happen that make perfect sense. A lot of these surprises that come up, what you'd call plot twists, actually land, and they're good. They're imaginative, and they work within the context of the story. Which is why I say that the person, again, and I don't know if it's the showrunners or the person who made the original copy pasta, they have talent. It's just that it it didn't quite land good enough to make it worth the investment of time were I not reviewing it for the show.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. I don't know how the other seasons are, if they're better or worse, but there were some genuinely really creepy things in there. And it was okay, but not really good. I liked the show. I mean, I like the show in the show, the Cottonwood Cove or whatever it was called, and how it played into the show. The mystery of, why one of the kids' bodies wasn't found and what happened with that. Things like that were okay.
Mhm.
It could have been a lot better. You could have taken the same exact elements and kept them the same and made a much better story out of it by reworking it by reworking it. Um, so it had potential. It needed a strong editor, strong rewrite, but that may have taken it further away from the original copy pasta. I don't know.
Maybe
Or
if that's
creepypasta. I keep on saying copy pasta. Creepypasta.
creepypasta.
Creepypasta. Please forgive me.
That I mean, but that might be it. They just might have been in a position where they just really wanted to stay true to the creepypasta and not worry too much about how well written it was. They just wanted to put it to film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't really fault them for that unless they're charging you $30 a ticket to watch it. In which case, we should expect a little bit more. But that's I don't have anything. I don't have anything else to add to that.
I mean, it's 8 episodes, so it wasn't like a super long time. I have spent more time watching worse television. Uh, it did not assault me like trying to watch Halo Season 2. It was not like getting stabbed in my forebrain. Um, and so it didn't cause me actual physical pain to watch. It was okay, I guess, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
Because there's too much time invested to get what good there is in out of it. And what good there is in it is more of, okay, I could see where that could have had potential. It's more of a it's more of a storyteller's good where you can analyze it and say, yes, that's a good payoff to this thing that was there. It's not an audience's payoff. It's like me coming to it as someone who likes stories and sees stories and can say, yes, that was a good payoff. I enjoyed that payoff, but it could have been done better. An audience member, I think, would have probably been bored. But then again, they made 4 seasons of it, so it must have done okay enough to keep on making it. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if the later seasons get better. Based solely on watching this, I would not watch the later seasons. I had no interest in watching later seasons. Um, but based on the first episode, I did want to continue watching to understand the mystery. So the first episode was at least good enough to make me want to keep watching. I really did like a lot of the ideas they had in there are really kind of classic horror ideas that are great. Like I love Psycho Kid movies where it's little kids like Children of the Corn, where it's the little kids that go crazy and are doing things. Um, and they had some of that in there. That's really good stuff that you can make a good story out of. So they had good material. They just didn't quite bring it all together well enough.
That's a shame.
Speaking of stuff I like, I also like demonic possession movies.
Do you now?
I do.
Well then, I've got good news for you. We just watched a movie that came out last year, actually. It was in theaters for a bit. Don't know how I missed it, but called Late Night with the Devil. And like we watched it on Shudder. Apparently, that's part of AMC Plus as well. Did you? We just saw it last night, the wife and I. Did you just see it recently?
I saw it on Wednesday. I like Wednesday last week, which I've decided is a good distance from the show because it gives me time enough to watch it, so it's fresh in my mind while at the same time giving me enough time to think it over, to have a good opinion formed of it before I do the show. So I'm going to try to, in the future, I'm going to try to get things watched in the Wednesday, Thursday time frame instead of seeing them Monday afternoon before the show. Monday afternoon to Monday night is not enough time to really have an opinion solidified to watch. I loved this movie. A lot about what I loved this movie because of is how well they nailed the 70s vibe.
Yeah, this movie is it is a movie about demonic possession, but yeah, in the vein of The Exorcist, but it's set entirely in the late 70s, actually might be early 80s, on a Johnny Carson style late night TV show where one of the guests on the show is a little girl who's possessed by a demon, and they actually bring the demon out on air, and horrible things happen. That's the conceit. You were saying.
They nailed the vibe of the clothes. They nailed the vibe of the and it doesn't go on too long. I think I counted only 2 or 3 jokes. He has a monologue at the beginning of the show, like late night talk show hosts do, and he's joking about Billy Carter, President Carter's brother, being an idiot. Um, and you can get the jokes by context and find them funny, but if you actually, and that was a little bit before my time because I was like 6 when this happened. But if you know about that time, it's even funnier. And so it is. It's almost a found footage movie, um,
Mhm.
except that it's just the taping of this show. It's one episode of a TV show, plus some back scenes, behind the scenes footage that happens during the commercial breaks. And it's got in the 70s things that were really big were psychics and psychic debunkers and um, parapsychology, um, books about all these. And this is a Halloween night festival or a Halloween night episode. And so some of the audience members are in costume. They've got the guys, Ed McMahon, um, backup. I don't know if they still do that. Do they still do that sort of thing with late night now, where they have a guy who's on screen um, who's the
Yeah.
sidekick to the
Yeah,
host?
I think most, if not most of the shows have the sidekick. Sometimes the sidekick doubles as the band leader.
Um, and so this is all right out of the 70s. And so they have a psychic come on the show. They have a debunker come on the show, a skeptic who's trying to debunk things. And they have a parapsychology lady who comes on the show with the little girl. Um, and then there is tiebacks to the talk show host who's been in this long running battle to try and get to be number one in the ratings, and some of the things going on with him, and ties in with his personal life. And it is not a slasher movie. It is a slow burn horror movie where they keep on amping up the tension as things go on, um, until the very end when things just completely
Unravel.
unravel. Yeah, everything just breaks loose. Um, and so it does a really fabulous job of putting you in a place and time where all of the guests of the show and all of the events of the show make perfect sense, and it captures that gestalt of that there's only 3 TV channels, and you're fighting to get to the top of these 3 TV channels, and uh, you are having to use all your talent to try. Johnny Carson, who is, you know, whose presence kind of dominates the show because he remade late night talk shows. He said, you will use every single thing you have learned in your entire life up until now to entertain people for the next 5 minutes. And me using that Johnny Carson quote is an example of me using everything I've learned in my entire life up until now to entertain people for the next 5 minutes. Um, but that's what this host is struggling with. He's trying to use everything he has, everything he's experienced, everything he's learned to be as entertaining as Johnny Carson, to try and wrest the late night crowd from Johnny Carson, and he just hasn't been able to do it. And the weight of that is always on his shoulders. The need to have these ratings and to get these ratings and to be number one is what drives him through the entire show. And his scumbag producer, who is the best character, absolutely. I mean, he's not a good person, but he is the most colorful character in the movie. He's amazing. Um, he's always there during the commercial breaks, trying to get him to do things like, jazz up the show, keep the audience excited, keep things going, meet with these people who come because they're the sponsors, and all of this. It just, that struggle for ratings, that struggle to be number one, is what drives the main character to do what he is doing right now and what he has done with the past. And it's his personality and his goals and his choices that drive what happens on the show. And so everything that happens is a direct result of that. And so it turns out to be a surprisingly personal movie, which is what good horror should be.
Yeah, absolutely. What I will say about it is that it is structurally it is about this host, and they make that clear at the beginning with a long expository section sort of explaining who this host is, what the setting is, what you're about to see is the taping of this show. And it really is about him, and it takes a traditional story, and this horror film, this plot could have been done any number of ways in any number of settings. It could have been made as a traditional movie, but they mapped it onto the single episode of a show. Um, and the story does an excellent job of making it clear at every point. After every scene, he has to sort of make a decision. He has to decide to continue. He has to decide what to do with the guests. And like you said, the scumbag producer always egging him on so that they could win. Um, Everything that happens, and of course, ultimately, it culminates with all of that introduction that explains him, the character, where he's from, sort of how he got there. uh, his past decisions also come back to haunt him, and it all converges at the end when it all goes crazy. Um, Really, I don't want to say it isn't anything I haven't seen before, but it was really well done, and what was really interesting about it was the way they told that story in the context of this show.
He, the main character, because of the choice, it's not like you don't have empathy for him, because they both build in empathy for him. You care about what's going on, but at the same time, he really is earning what happens with every choice he makes.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I think it's a really well done movie. I thought it was great. It's one of the best horror movies I've seen in a long time. Uh, because it's not cheap. Um, it doesn't ever it doesn't ever it doesn't ever punk out on allowing the character to,
Dig his own grave.
yeah, he has lots of choices. He has lots of opportunities to turn away from the path he's on, and he just keeps on making choices.
Yeah.
And so what happens is fully earned.
There's it's not jump scares, it's not mindless slasher things. It's from the beginning of the movie, they sort of set up this is the situation that the character's been in, this is the situation the character's put himself in, and now he's at a point where you know that how he got to this point, and part of the horror is or the part of the enjoyment, depending on how twisted you are, is watching him continue to damn himself with those choices. And it just keeps going and going, and it ratchets up, the tension and the danger every time he has to do that. It's really well done. I really like the way it was plotted.
So yeah, I would definitely recommend this movie. Obviously, if possession movies bother you too much, don't see this. But it's a really good horror movie, and it's a really good possession movie, and um, it's not a cheap, and I don't mean cheap in the sense of low budget. I mean it doesn't go for easy. Uh, it's not a movie that's just about victimizing people for no reason. It's not a possession porn movie. You can make a movie that's about a demonic possession where all you do is take some innocent girl and throw her on the screen and torture her for 2 hours and say, "Oh, that's so horrible," while other people around them try to save her and say, "Oh, look, that's it's so terrible. It's a demonic possession." That's not what this movie is. It doesn't pour acid all over your emotions by tormenting an innocent person just for no reason. Um, and that kind of movie can be done poorly and really nastily. Um, I don't think The Exorcist does it. I think The Exorcist is a phenomenal movie because that's about something completely different. But this movie is not about that sort of thing. It's not, possession porn. It's not about just making innocent people suffer for no other reason than to say, "Oh, that's so horrible." Um, and so it's a lot more visceral than that. And it's about a man who realizes what he's doing while at the same time having the opportunity to stop it, but just choosing not to. And that's what's horrifying about it, almost even more so than the supernatural parts, is you can see in his eyes he realizes what he's doing. Like the performance of that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
The guy who does it knows what he's doing, and he knows he should stop, but he just chooses not to. That's really, you know, that's really human in a way. That's really core to humanity. A
Yeah.
lot of our mistakes come that way, is when we know what we're doing is wrong and we know we need to stop, but we just don't, and then the disaster comes. Um, so yeah, I think it's a great movie. I think it's a movie that's worth watching. Um, I'm not trying to make it out, to be more than it is, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's a good horror movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
So,
I
um,
concur 111%.
so this is, uh, yeah. I don't have anything else because anything else I would say would be to spoil what goes on in the movie, and I don't want to do that.
Now go watch
Uh,
it. It's good.
so yeah, definitely a recommend.
Cool.
Um, I would only recommend Channel Zero is if you want to be a writer and you want to look at plotting done wrong and get an idea of what it's like to drop plot elements or not pick them up or leave things hanging or have things missing. It could be actually instructive that way to see something done wrong because a lot of times you can learn more from things done wrong than done right. But I would definitely recommend Late Night with the Devil. Absolutely.
Me too. Good show.
All right, I think that's it for today.
Let's call it a week. Good talking to you, Daddy Warpig. Awesome talking to everybody in chat. And I do hope everybody who listens later, if you haven't yet, definitely go see that horror movie. Get it on Shudder and do like I'm going to do for the rest of the week and watch a bunch of other stupid horror stuff while you have your subscription. Um,
I think I'm going to watch, and I can't guarantee it because every time I say I think I'm going to do something, I ended up doing something completely different. But I think
you're real bad at that, yeah.
I really, really am. I'm terrible at that. It's like the worst. I think I want to watch Continental and Shogun, but don't hold me to that.
I'm not. I'm not.
All right. Is it my turn?
Please.
All right, folks. Thanks for turning into the show. Thanks for everyone for jumping in the chat, participating live. Thanks for everyone who will listen later. We've been Geek Gab for Monday, April 29th, 2024. Please feel free to subscribe to us and click the bell icon so you can get an announcement as to when we're going live. We are here on youtube.com/geekgab. Once again, that's youtube.com/geekgab. You can get us also on the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on SoundCloud.com. Just do a search for Geek Gab. You can listen to us on the device of your choice on the web or download us to your computer for your convenience because we love you just that much. Please also consider donating to our Patreon or our Subscribe Star. We work extra hard watching things so that you don't have to, or that you know what you can watch and be absolutely delighted and edified by. Folks, we are signing out for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret, we will be back.